My name is Thomas Strottner. I'm from Bright AI. And just to inform you, in the program, it was said that Marian, our CEO, will be today's speaker. I'm the head of business development, and Marian unfortunately couldn't make it. So I'm today replacing him. So please bear with me. Maybe I will hide this thumbnail so that you can see the full presentation. And today I will talk about data privacy, AI, and the use of video data. And so as an introduction, it's quite interesting. The CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, said very famously that software is eating the world, but AI is going to eat software. And what he was referring to was a quote by Marian Gläser that was very famous about software eating the world. And what he wanted to emphasize is that it will be part of our everyday life and will take also over a lot of parts in very different industries. So this is also what we are seeing today. And in fact, we can also see this from the spending that is, or the money that is being spent on AI systems. So IDC research shows that by 2023, the spending on AI systems will actually reach almost 100 billion US dollars, which is 2.5 times the value in 2019. So we can see that there's a lot of growth in this area. And when looking at this, the pictures from the background of this slide, you also see some of the verticals that this is referring to. So we see this growth in automotive, especially with the development of autonomous vehicles. We see this in the area of smart city analytics, and one big growth area will also be retail, like intelligent retail concepts, as we see this already from Amazon Go. And what these different areas have in common is that the sensor that is being used to actually make the systems intelligent is a camera. And in fact, there are so many different industries where cameras are the best sensor to capture the environment and to generate the intelligence that these systems need. And of course, every time we have cameras in public that are recording people and then also requiring that data to be processed, it is very crucial to look at the aspect of data privacy. By the way, what I haven't mentioned before, it would be great if you can post any questions in the chat function or ask them after my short presentation. So at Bright AI, we also looked at different privacy laws worldwide. And we actually looked at 6 major markets when it comes to AI and analytics. We looked at the US, at the European Union, we looked at Japan, South Korea, China, and Brazil. Because what we see, and originally the title was GDPR for this presentation, and what we see is that in Europe, there are also some people saying or claiming that because of data privacy, it's very hard to develop intelligent systems or AI systems. So we took a look at different privacy laws worldwide. We did this study in cooperation also with the German AI Association, the KI Bundesverband. And what we saw is, so first, it was that there are not many specific guidelines on AI or video data processing in particular. That's not very surprising because the data privacy regulations give first and foremost guidelines on how to process personal data, and then what personal data means and in which area you have to take most care of this. This is then part of the interpretation. However, when looking at video data, it's most likely that when you collect it in public, that a lot of personal data will be collected. So one major topic also that we see from the companies that we spoke to is that privacy by design when developing AI systems is becoming more important. What we also saw is looking at these different markets, there's actually rather a trend for increasing harmonization. So this might be a bit counterintuitive, or also by definition, the laws of different countries are different. And then, for example, in the US, there's not even one nationwide law, but there are state-based laws. But what we could see is that with the introduction of the California Consumer Privacy Act this year, actually lots of the principles that we also have in Europe were adopted by the US. And now there are more and more voices that are also calling for a nationwide privacy law in the US. So that's a general trend. Then looking at Japan, for example, there was the adequacy decision by the European Union also. There are also ongoing negotiations with South Korea. And when looking at all the privacy laws in these countries, we see that a lot of definitions, a lot of guidelines are quite similar. Then Brazil is getting a new privacy law. The introduction has been postponed due to COVID-19. But in general, this new privacy law also takes a lot of the general guidelines from the GDPR, also when looking at the fines, for example. Also China, which might be a surprise to some, has privacy laws that are not very transparent and often not very clear. But when doing data collection projects or video data collection projects, for example, automotive companies also have to abide to these laws. And one aspect that is very important is that personal information in this video data needs to be anonymized. We've also seen that with the protests going on worldwide, for example, in Hong Kong, or with the Black Lives Matter protests in the US, there were actually lots of debates also about the use of facial recognition. And this was also happening in China. There were also big discussions about this. And this brings us to the third point, that it's not only about compliance, but also worldwide. It's more and more important to abide to these concepts because of social responsibility, not only because of the laws. And facial recognition is definitely one of the big areas in this regard. So I already mentioned that we've seen this with protests in the US. So there were lots of articles about this. We've seen this with the protests in Hong Kong. And now there were even articles talking about the use of masks and how this impacts facial recognition systems. So every day we see new articles coming up. I think yesterday there was an article about the Tokyo Olympics now considering the use of facial recognition. Yeah, this is something that comes up every day in the news. And there's an example that is quite famous also here in Berlin about how it was dealt with facial recognition. So this is a train station in the south of Berlin. And they had two entrance areas. One was no facial recognition and one was for facial recognition. It's kind of funny also that the door on the left side is closed, but that's only a side note. So it's interesting to see how we deal also then with this concept of privacy and innovation, that sometimes it's also a feeling of it's like an either or decision. And that brings me also to one of the solutions that we are working at Bright AI on. So our mission is to protect every identity in public. And for us, it's very important that we also do this in these times where innovation is crucial, where also technologies that could be misused, like facial recognition, are evolving. So also in this environment that is very difficult, we want to protect every identity in public. And coming to the solution, so when we talk about visual data, there are of course different means of protecting individuals. We have developed very accurate software to redact faces. So what you see here in the middle is what we call precision blur. So that means that we detect faces or license plates, and we can anonymize this information by blurring the information. We do this in a very good way, but for some projects, you need actual data that can be analyzed. So when we look at things like autonomous driving, where a lot of data is collected, it's very relevant that the data is natural and can be analyzed and can be used for machine learning. So what you see here on the right side is what we call deep natural anonymization. And I can show you very quickly what this solution is about. So the starting point for this is that faces in a video or in an image are being detected. And for each face, an artificial overlay is generated. These artificial overlays are then placed on top of the original faces. And what is very important to consider here is that these synthetically generated faces don't exist in the real world. And what is also very important to consider is that this process is non-reversible. There's no way of reverse engineering this. So every face gets replaced by an artificial face that is then protected in terms of their identity. And I can quickly show you a demo on how we actually protect identities with this natural solution. So there are some demos that are publicly available to use for facial recognition trials. And what you can see here is if we apply to this young woman the precision blur, you see that the system says we were unable to find faces in one of the specified images. And that's actually great because we want to protect the person, and if here no face can be detected, of course also the identity cannot be tracked with facial recognition systems. However, as I mentioned before, for innovation, it might be very useful to actually detect a human being. For example, if a car is driving on the street and has to detect if there's a person, and this also is very relevant for the training data to actually develop these systems. So what I can show you is what happens when we compare the original face to the synthetically generated face, so the natural anonymization. And what you can see here is that the verification from this system shows that these two faces belong to different people. And I mean, this is even considering that this is the exact same image and all the surroundings are exactly the same. So by generating this artificial object, the confidence is so low that this cannot be matched to an individual anymore. And especially when we look at very large data sets, as we do in smart city analytics or in the data that is captured for autonomous driving, it will probably not be individuals going through all the files, but the biggest risk is an automatic detection. So this is something that we've developed in order to bring these two worlds together of innovation and data privacy. And we are very open also to discussing with experts on the matter, and I'm very open also to your questions. So please feel free to use the chat function in this video call, or just raise your voice and talk to us. Thank you very much. So far, I don't see any question in the chat. I think it's important also when you, okay, so Mirabella Metzler was saying the two faces are different for the program, but they really look alike. Is that not a problem? There are two things to that. So one thing that I also mentioned, it's very important that when we look at big data and we look at the amounts of video that are collected, for example, by test vehicles, it will be, first of all, I think, close to impossible that anyone goes manually through all the files and tries to identify someone personally. But the biggest risk that we see in this kind of data is that you do an automatic detection. So it's very, very important to make this impossible. Also, we did some case studies, and what you now have to consider is the image that I showed you from the lady is exactly the same image with all the same surrounding, with the same clothes and exactly the same scenery. So usually you will not have that. If you look at a data set where people have been naturally anonymized, then you don't know that particular scene. And we have seen that actually people that know someone that has been changed by our natural anonymization solution find it harder to re-identify someone because they are so familiar with them that if they look different, they don't recognize them again. So when it comes to the problem, I think I can understand the concern. And we also offer a blurring solution. We also offer a full body blurring solution. But what I can also tell you is that in many use cases, it's just not possible to apply blurring because the data needs to be natural. And I think when we have the alternative of not doing anything, as many companies probably are doing today, or protecting them against an automatic re-identification, then this is really something good that we can do. I hope this answers the the question. Great. Does the solution also protect against gate analysis? With a gate, I feel this is a lack in my English. It's probably the way someone walks. Yes. Okay. Yes. I also know, and we are well aware that there are also other means of re-identifying someone. We are investigating on how far these systems are. As far as I'm aware, when you compare facial recognition and the way that someone walks, I think it's much harder to re-identify an individual in a large data sets with the means that exist today when it comes to someone walking. I can tell you also that it's something that we are investigating, and where we are seeing if it's feasible to also change things like the nature of someone walking. Right now, I feel that the systems are not that far that it's really feasible to re-identify an individual as well as with facial recognition. But please, if you have detailed information on this, also feel free to shoot an email, and we can also discuss this because I'm also happy to learn more about what methods or systems today already exist for this. Has the solution been endorsed, approved by an supervisory authority? So what's very important to note is there is no GDPR stamp today. There's nothing that officially is approved as a GDPR seal. So first we were a bit reluctant to getting like a marketing seal or marketing stamp. What was most important to us is that we really go to authorities together with companies that we work with, and we get it approved on a case-by-case basis. And this is what we have done so far. So we work with very large companies in automotive. We work with Deutsche Bahn, for example. And in the projects that we are conducting with these companies, we were also involving authorities. So yes, on the case-by-case basis, we have improvements, but there is no official seal that works in general. Yes, what we are investigating now is an independent audit. Or what we are conducting now is an independent audit that also goes a bit beyond the product itself. So it also takes in consideration our IT security, because that's of course also very important, because our system can be used both on-premise by clients or in the cloud. So we are also working on certifying this entire process. This is something where we do an independent audit, but unfortunately, there's nothing official. There was someone I saw in the video, I felt wanted to raise a question. If there's any other question, you can also feel free to send an email. So you see here my email, which is thomas@brighter.ai. And then, I'm also happy to answer your questions. Yeah, also from my side, thank you to everyone who joined. Thanks, Kevin, for organizing this. And then I hope everyone has more sessions with nice talks and conversations. And I'm also looking forward to continuing the discussion with you. So have a good day.